Are you ready to dive into one of the most transformative periods in history? Today, we'll explore the seismic events of World War I, uncovering the intricate web of causes, the intense battles that defined it, and the profound technological advancements it spurred. From the claustrophobic trenches to the home front, we'll dissect the lasting impact on our world. So get comfortable and prepare for a riveting journey back in time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shero, and I make a daily podcast with different and trending topics. Those who want to learn English and improve their speaking, please listen carefully until the end. This is the 4th episode of the Conversation Podcast. Get ready to learn about World War I, an exciting war. Let's start the podcast. So Lillian, let's dive into what really set the stage for World War I. There were a lot of simmering tensions, right?
Absolutely, Shero. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were filled with political and military buildup. One of the main causes was the extensive network of alliances. Countries like Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance, while France, Russia, and the United Kingdom banded together in the Triple Entente.
These alliances were supposed to act as deterrents to war, but in reality, they created a domino effect. Any conflict between two countries could quickly pull allied nations into a larger war.
Correct. And then we have the rising nationalism within various empires. Various ethnic groups, especially in the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Balkans, desired independence. This nationalism caused internal tensions and increased the risk of conflict. Let's not forget the arms race. Major powers were rapidly expanding their armies and navies. Germany's naval expansion was particularly alarming to the British, who saw it as a direct threat to their maritime dominance.
Exactly. The militarization meant that countries were more than ready for conflict. Another crucial factor was imperialism. The major European powers were competing for colonies and influence around the world, often clashing in places like Africa and Asia.
And then, of course, the immediate spark, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. This event in June 1914 acted as the trigger, but it was the underlying tensions that really allowed this assassination to ignite a full-scale war.
That's right. His assassination by a Bosnian Serb nationalist set off a chain reaction. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, declared war on Serbia, which was supported by Russia. Alliances pulled more countries into the conflict, leading to a global war. It's fascinating and tragic how a single event, amid so much underlying friction, can lead to such widespread devastation. These causes created a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. One of the defining elements of World War I was undoubtedly its major battles, and the strategies that were employed by both the Allies and Central Powers. To start, we have to talk about the Battle of the Marne in 1914. This battle was crucial because it stopped the German advance into France and marked the beginning of trench warfare. The Allies managed to push back the Germans, effectively ending hopes for a quick victory.
Yes, Shero. The Battle of the Marne is often considered the turning point that set the stage for prolonged and grueling trench warfare. Both sides dug in and constructed elaborate trench systems that stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border. The intention behind these trenches was to protect soldiers from machine gun fire and artillery, but they also resulted in a stalemate that lasted for years. Trench warfare brought about a new set of military strategies aimed at breaking enemy lines. One of the most infamous battles, the Battle of Verdun in 1916, epitomized the brutal and attritional nature of World War I. The Germans launched an intense assault against the French fortress of Verdun, intending to bleed France white, but the French, under General Philippe Pétain, held out for almost a year, suffering immensely yet managing to repel the Germans.
Exactly, and the toll was horrendous on both sides. Verdun became a symbol of French determination and resistance, but at a tremendous human cost. It's also worth mentioning the Battle of the Somme, which took place later in 1916. This was a joint British and French offensive aimed at breaking through the German lines. The first day of the battle remains one of the bloodiest in British military history, with nearly 60,000 casualties.
The Battle of the Somme was supposed to be a breakthrough, but it ended up exemplifying the futility and high cost of trench warfare. One notable aspect of the Somme was the first use of tanks in warfare, introduced by the British. Although they had limited success initially, their deployment marked the beginning of a shift toward mechanized warfare.
Moving forward to 1917, the Third Battle of Ypres, also known as the Battle of Passchendaele, is another key engagement. The battle was notorious for its appalling conditions due to heavy rain, turning the battlefield into a quagmire. The Allies aimed to capture the ridges south and east of Ypres in Belgium, but the resultant gains were minimal in comparison to the losses suffered.
It's also crucial to highlight the impact of the Eastern Front and battles like Tannenberg in 1914, where the Germans decisively defeated Russian forces. This victory had significant strategic and morale implications, showing the importance of mobility and quick, decisive action, which contrasted sharply with the static nature of the Western Front.
That's true. And let's not forget the introduction of new naval strategies and the significant role of naval battles like the Battle of Jutland in 1916. This was the largest naval battle and only full-scale clash of battleships in the war. Although tactically inconclusive, it demonstrated the importance of the naval blockade, which eventually contributed to Germany's economic strangulation and its request for an armistice.
Along with these key battles, various military strategies were employed to try to gain an advantage. Attritional strategies like those seen in Verdun were meant to wear down the enemy. In contrast, the German Spring Offensive of 1918 aimed at achieving a decisive breakthrough before American forces could be fully deployed to Europe.
Yes, the Spring Offensive initially saw significant advances as the Germans utilized stormtrooper tactics to infiltrate and disrupt enemy lines efficiently. However, this strategy ultimately failed due to lack of sustaining resources and overextension, coupled with the fresh influx of American troops who bolstered the Allied counteroffensives.
The 100 Days Offensive in 1918 marked the final turning point of the war. Beginning in August, the Allies launched a series of highly effective attacks, utilizing improved tactics and coordination that eventually forced the Germans to seek an armistice on November 11, 1918.
Absolutely, these last battles showed how far military strategy had evolved over the course of the war. From initial static trench warfare to more dynamic strategies involving coordination of infantry, tanks, and aircraft, the nature of conflict had been fundamentally altered. And there you have it, a glimpse into the major battles and strategies of World War I. Each battle left a profound impact on the course of the war and ultimately shaped the direction of 20th century military tactics. The impact of World War I wasn't confined to the battlefield. It reverberated deeply into civilian life. Lillian, could you tell us how the war affected daily life for folks on the home front?
Absolutely, Shero. One of the most immediate changes was economic disruption. Many industries had to pivot to support the war effort, producing weapons, ammunition, and supplies. This shift created necessity and drove innovation in a way that peacetime might never have achieved.
Right, and that wasn't the only transformation. It's fascinating to see how necessity truly becomes the mother of invention, especially in times of war. Throughout World War I, the technological leaps made an indelible mark on history, forever changing the landscape of both warfare and global progress. So, Lillian, the path to the end of World War I was quite intricate and filled with many decisive moments. Let's dive into the specific events that led to the end of this monumental conflict.
Absolutely, Shero. By 1918, the Central Powers were struggling significantly. Resources were depleted, and morale was at an all-time low. One key event was the Spring Offensive launched by Germany in March 1918. They aimed to end the war before American troops could fully arrive and tip the balance.
That's a great point. The German Spring Offensive initially saw success, pushing deep into Allied lines, but the Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive known as the 100 Days Offensive, which began in August 1918.
Exactly. The 100 Days Offensive involved several major battles, where combined arms tactics of infantry, tanks, and airplanes were used effectively by the Allies. This sustained pressure eventually broke through the German defenses, marking substantial progress towards the war's end. As these offensives continued, internal pressures within Germany also intensified. Not only were they failing on the front lines, but back home, civil unrest was growing. The situation deteriorated rapidly, as strikes and demonstrations demanding an end to the war spread across the country.
Yes, and the naval mutinies in late October 1918 were particularly significant. The sailors' refusal to follow orders for a final, misguided attack showcased the widespread disillusionment with the war among the German military.
Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, the Allies had been in contact with representatives from Germany. On November 9, 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated the throne amidst these internal revolts, paving the way for a provisional government.
The abdication was crucial. With the old regime out of the picture, the new government, led by Friedrich Ebert, sought an armistice to halt the fighting. On November 11, 1918, at 11 a.m., the Armistice of Compiègne was signed between the Allies and Germany.
The signing of the armistice marked the official end of hostilities on the Western Front. However, it wasn't the final step in concluding the armistice.
Exactly, and there is much to reflect on regarding the lessons learned from this war, how the Treaty of Versailles aimed to create stability, yet the conditions it fostered led to further turmoil. Thank you, Shero, for such a detailed discussion on the end of World War I. Thank you, Lillian. It was great delving into these significant historical events and understanding their widespread impact. So, Lillian, let's talk about the long-term consequences of World War I. This war had far-reaching impacts well beyond the battlefields.
Absolutely, Shero. One of the most significant consequences was the dramatic shift in political landscapes around the world. The war led to the fall of empires, including the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, German, and Russian empires.
The geopolitical map of Europe was redrawn entirely, wasn't it? New countries emerged, and borders were realigned, often leading to future conflicts and tensions.
Yes, and speaking of future conflicts, the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles are widely considered to have sown the seeds for World War II. The treaty imposed heavy reparations and territorial losses on Germany, leading to widespread resentment and economic hardship.
This economic strain contributed heavily to the rise of extremist movements, including the Nazi Party in Germany, which capitalized on the public's dissatisfaction and desperation.
Exactly. On a broader economic level, the war caused a seismic shift in global economic power. For instance, Europe was heavily indebted to the United States by the end of the war, propelling the U.S. into a dominant economic position. And let's not forget the social impacts. The war caused unprecedented loss of life and left millions of soldiers and civilians scarred both physically and mentally. The concept of shell shock, now known as PTSD, emerged from this period.
This also led to significant changes in societies. The roles of women, for example, shifted dramatically. With so many men away fighting, women had to step into roles that were previously considered exclusively male domains, particularly in industrial work.
This shift played a crucial role in the women's suffrage movements, gaining momentum, leading to women gaining the right to vote in many countries shortly after the war ended.
There were also advancements in medicine and technology during the war that had lasting impacts. Many medical techniques and technologies developed during the war to treat injuries were adapted for civilian use post-war.
And socially, the war marked the end of what was considered the golden age of Europe. The sense of optimism and progress that characterized the pre-war period gave way to a more cynical and disillusioned outlook.
The cultural impacts were profound as well. Literature, art, and philosophy were heavily influenced by the collective trauma of the war, leading to movements like modernism, which sought to depict the fragmented reality of the post-war world.
And we can't ignore the impact on colonial territories. The war weakened many European colonial powers, setting the stage for decolonization movements in Asia and Africa in the subsequent decades.
That's right. The war also led directly to the formation of the League of Nations, an early attempt at a collective security organization aimed at preventing future conflicts. Though it ultimately failed to prevent World War II, it laid the groundwork for the United Nations.
In summary, World War I fundamentally altered the economic, political, and social fabric of the world. Its long-term consequences were far-reaching and have continued to shape global events even up to the present day.
It's incredible to think how one conflict set off a chain reaction of changes that are still felt over a century later.
As we reflect on World War I, it's crucial to understand the profound lessons it left behind. One of the most significant is the destructive power of nationalism when taken to extremes.
Absolutely, Lillian. The fervent nationalism that pervaded Europe in the early 20th century fueled a climate of rivalry and suspicion among nations, which ultimately led to the catastrophic conflict.
Another vital lesson is the importance of diplomacy and communication. The alliances and treaties meant to maintain peace actually created a fragile balance that, when disturbed, had devastating consequences.
Yes, the lack of effective communication and multilateral diplomacy exacerbated the tensions. Post-war, the establishment of the League of Nations, although imperfect, was an essential step toward the creation of bodies like the United Nations to foster international dialogue.
The war also underscored the horrific human cost of conflict. Millions of lives were lost, and many more were irrevocably changed, highlighting the urgent need for future generations to seek peaceful resolutions to disputes.
Indeed, the trenches and battlefields left a lasting impression on the collective memory, emphasizing the horrors of war and the importance of striving for peace. In terms of societal impact, World War I demonstrated the resilience and adaptability of civilians during wartime. The total war effort saw entire populations mobilized, affecting societal norms and accelerating changes in gender roles and technology. This shift laid the groundwork for future movements toward gender equality and women's rights.
Economically, the war revealed both the strengths and vulnerabilities of industrialized nations. The massive war expenditures demonstrated the necessity for economic stability and cooperation in post-war rebuilding efforts.
Furthermore, the Treaty of Versailles, while aimed at securing peace, taught us about the perils of punitive reparations and the importance of fair and balanced peace settlements to prevent future conflicts.
Historians often point out that the harsh terms imposed on Germany fueled economic despair and political instability, which indirectly set the stage for World War II. This demonstrates the need for reconciliation rather than retribution in peace treaties.
World War I also influenced military strategy and technology. The brutal realities of trench warfare and the introduction of tanks, chemical weapons, and aircraft changed the nature of warfare forever.
Exactly, Shero. These advancements reminded us of the ethical responsibilities that come with technological progress. The Geneva Protocol of 1925, which prohibited the use of chemical and biological weapons, was a direct response to the war's atrocities.
The global political landscape was radically altered as well. Empires fell, new nations emerged, and colonial subjects began to demand more autonomy, signaling the beginning of the end for colonialism.
The war's end also marked a shift toward modern statecraft, with the recognition that international cooperation is crucial for global stability. Institutions built post-war continue to influence international relations to this day.
As we look back, World War I serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the relentless need for vigilance, cooperation, and compassion in maintaining global harmony.
It shaped modern history in ways we are still understanding today, reminding us of the dire consequences of conflict and the enduring hope for a peaceful world.
Reflecting on these lessons, we aim to understand history not just as a series of events, but as a continuous dialogue that informs our present and shapes our future.
Exactly. And the key takeaway is that by learning from the past, we can aspire to build a better and more peaceful world moving forward.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on World War I. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe for more engaging episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so feel free to share them with us. Until next time, stay curious. Stay curious. Stay curious.